Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Maria, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Today's guest is Bill Turpin. Bill Turpin is co-founder of Biography Health. He is a seasoned tech entrepreneur who founded startups that were pioneers in personal computing, Windows, and the internet. Throughout his career in Austin and Silicon Valley, he's also served in leadership roles at public companies such as Netscape, Borland, and Texas Instrument. He's been an advisor to leading venture funds such as Kleiner Perkins, providing mentoring to fellow innovators, and is an active angel investor. Bill, welcome today. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to all of our valued clients who have taken time to attend today's webinar. We really appreciate your participation, and we're excited to share some insights that hopefully will be valuable for you. Today, we'll be talking about the book Outlive, as well as one of Bill's businesses, Biography Health, and how they've been able to incorporate some of those items that we learned about in the book Outlive, so that we can have a better health span, not just a longer lifespan. And then also, just before we do get started with getting to know Bill a little bit better, I do want to make sure everyone has access to the chat as well, and or the Q&A. So if you're having any issues with that, let me know however you can. But feel free to ask questions throughout our conversation that you would like answered by Bill. All right, so let's get started. Bill, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself and about your company, Biography Health?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so I assume many people on the call are around Missouri here. So I want to start out with, I'm a Missouri native, grew up in a little town called Bowling Green. My dad was a lawyer and eventually became circuit judge, and we moved to St. Charles. So I went to high school in St. Charles and went to the University of Missouri. It's really the only school I really applied to. And I got an electrical engineering degree in 1978. So back at the very beginning of computers is when I started out, and I was just fascinated with computers. So once I got out, I moved to Texas for 12 years and worked at Texas Instruments on microprocessors, PCs. While I was there, I started my first company to build a Windows application back when Windows was just getting started. And we were acquired by our company in Silicon Valley that made me move out there as part of the deal. So in 1990, I moved out to the Bay Area, worked at a company there. Microsoft was killing us with their product. I was a company called Borland. And so in 1994, myself and several quit our jobs, and we dug into the internet back when it was really, really new. And we started working on some products. And early in 95, a company called Netscape acquired our whole team and brought us on board before they'd gone public. And I went on to become VP of engineering at Netscape and helped roll out servers and all kinds of things while I was there. My group kind of developed what's called cloud computing today. Where computing is done up in the sky, you don't know where. We sort of innovated a lot of that. So I was Netscape, left there, started a company, got funded by Kleiner Perkins, the guys that had funded Amazon, Netscape, Sun Microsystems and all. We were trying to do user-generated content, kind of like Reddit before its time. So that one didn't make it. I did video game company. I did several other interesting companies. And then in 2014, I decided to move back to Missouri here in Columbia. I wanted to sort of share my experiences and give back and help create new entrepreneurs and new companies here in Columbia. So one of the things I did is I created a small VC fund. Mindy knows all about. We got $1 million from the university and another $1 million from the community. and we invested in companies, and several of them are doing really well. And so I just really enjoyed sharing my experience and helping the area here. But along the way, I learned a lot about healthcare through working with University of Missouri and some biotech companies. And so around 2020, I guess, I started having ideas on how to do healthcare better, primarily in the electronic health record, the IT side of things. And then in what year was it? 22, I guess, when MU launched the Precision Medicine Institute. I was involved in that. And that's where I met my soon-to-be partner, William Stanford. He's an MD PhD in Los Angeles who is actually practicing precision medicine. And after getting to know him, he's an MU alum also, by the way, College of Engineering. After getting to know him, we decided we would join forces. And with his medical background and my technology background, we would try to create a new way to do medicine. And then along comes Peter Attia's book, Outlive. And he basically describes exactly what we're trying to do with our company. We're trying to build a platform that allows physicians to actually implement all the latest technologies and prevent things from happening instead of waiting for them to happen. The difference between us and Peter Attia is Peter Attia is sort of trying to educate the world with a really good book so that people can help themselves. And that's a great goal, and he's doing that. We are trying to educate the doctors so they can do it with their patients. And if you're curious, there's a lot of reasons why they don't do it today. And I don't want to get into that, but that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to accomplish the same thing that the Outlive book is trying to accomplish in terms of healthcare. We're just taking an approach where we're trying to build a platform that a lot of other people can use. Because right now, Peter Attia has a small practice. My understanding is it's $90,000 a year if you want him to be your doctor. And I really think we need to democratize it so a lot more people have access to that. And so that's what we're trying to do right here in Columbia. We're based in Columbia. Although the majority of my employees right now are other places. My engineers are in Silicon Valley. My MD PhD partner is in Los Angeles. But we are starting to build up more here in Columbia. And it's my home, and I'm happy to be here doing what I'm doing. So turn it back over to more questions.
Yeah, thank you.
And feel free in the chat window. I like to be interactive as much as possible. So don't be shy to ask questions.
Absolutely. Please ask us any questions that you'd like to know the answers to. So could you tell us a little bit more about specifically how Biography Health functions, or kind of the role of Biography Health in someone's potential care team?
Yeah. So doctors are constrained right now inside the big health systems, especially. They get like 15 to 17 minutes to meet with a patient. They have to do everything in that 17 minutes, including typing on their computers a lot so that the billing can be done. And so they've really focused in on just fixing known diagnosed problems. And often there's a pretty easy solution. It's a antibiotic or a vaccine or things that apply to everybody. But what Peter Attia's book says, and what we know now, is we're all individuals, we're all different, and what works for somebody might not work for somebody else. And so before I started working with Dr. Stanford, my partner, he was manually collecting all this data, including genetic information, labs, family history, pulling all that together and then looking at it to try to figure out what can I do to help this particular patient. And it took him about 15 hours per person. And so that's where, when he met me and I said, hey, let me help you automate that, he was, over the moon. So, but with the automation, we're able to look at your whole genome. Each of us, there's about 30 million variations between us as humans. Some matter more than others. There's a lot of lab results. There's just a lot of data that makes it where a modern computer can just really help somebody. Now, we're not going to replace doctors. That's not our goal, but we're trying to help them. And I see that as sort of Outlive as a great book. I'm frankly surprised 1 million people bought it, more than 1 million, because it's dense, it's scientific, it's got a lot of information in it. And bless their heart, a lot of people have read it and are trying to do it. And we are just trying to, again, make that easier and where you can get a physician to help you, because a lot of things that Atia can't talk about in his book, or the FDA would be mad, are things that you need to have a doctor helping you do. Like, for instance, I just yesterday, I went over to Boone and I got a CT angiogram. So it looked, a CT image of my, up here where my heart is. And we're going to get a 3D rendering of my coronary arteries, and we're going to see where the plaque is. You have to have a doctor to order that test. You just can't walk into Boone and say, hey, I want one of these tests because I'm going to look at it myself. Genetic sequencing, the kind we do, you need a doctor's orders. So we really think it's good to get doctors leveled up and participating in this to help people, because there's a lot of people that could use the ideas that are in Outlive that are not educated enough or persistent enough or wealthy enough or all the issues to be able to help themselves. So our goal is to make that class of medicine available to everyone. Going to take time, but we want to, I don't have to work these days. I don't need the money, but I'm passionate about this because healthcare is such an important thing. And I think we're doing it wrong in the United States. There's a lot of reasons not to like it. So I'm just passionate about it.
Yeah, I feel like that's a big message in the book, is that the way we're going about it is wrong, and it is very reactive. But when you talk about everything that a doctor might have to do in 15 minutes, it starts to make a little more sense, right? Especially when it's taking a doctor 15 hours to do the kind of work that might be necessary to go through this incredibly long checklist that you would
Right.
get after reading this book. So even if you read it, retained all of the information, went to your primary care doctor, it might be taking them 15 hours. And that's
Yeah.
like, I think a big if, right? You're right, it's a pretty thick book. um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's accessible, but that doesn't necessarily equate to action.
Yeah. I'm curious if people want to just chime in on the chat, those that read it, what did you pick out and what did you implement? And how did you decide to do that versus all the other things that you could have done, what we do is we get the genetic analysis. Like I said, there's up to 30 million variations or so between people out of your billion base pairs. And we run it through algorithms that create what's called polygenic risk. So there are some famous genes now that we all know about, like BRCA. If you have BRCA, and you're female and you're of a certain ethnicity, that's one gene is very significant for you. But for most things, it's a combination of genes that affect a whole organ system. And so these polygenic risks look at across your entire genetic variations and rate your risk for things like coronary disease, colon cancer. There's just all these things. And so we run people through that, and that kind of helps stratify, oh, here's something you need to look at because you're high risk at this. So it's kind of like financial investing. I'm pretty sure everybody on the call has a financial planner and they think about the future. But to think about the future, you kind of have to know, are interest rates going to go up? Are they going to go down? What's going to happen in China? So you kind of got to know the lay of the land and have a plan. And again, that's what financial advisors are for. They help you create the plan. We think people need a doctor in most cases, a really good doctor to help them make their plan and help them stick with it.
Yeah, and I think that was a big reason why we wanted to have a discussion about this, because in order for us to create a plan, a question always is, well, how long should we assume you're going to live, right?
Right, right.
So the plan is
Yeah,
going to be very different if we assume the plan only lasts 40 years versus if the plan lasts 110 years. And I think that's a really difficult question for me to answer for myself, for clients to answer for themselves. And I think sometimes we kind of do a quick shortcut of, well, my parents lived this long and my, great aunt lived this long. And that might not necessarily be really a very accurate way of
no,
coming up with one of the very essential pieces of that plan.
yeah, yeah. A
And
lot of, like there are 4 diseases that cause 50% of the deaths. And it's cardio, cancer, metabolic, and dang it, what's the other one? Neuro. 50% of people are going to die from one of those. We know a lot about them. There's a lot you can do to prevent them. Why wouldn't you want to prevent them? Particularly dementia. My mother's 97, late stage dementia. I don't want to live like that when I'm 97. I would like to live to be 97, but not like that. And that's why I think we want to accumulate our money, protect our money, invest our money wisely, is so in those years we can continue to enjoy life and help others and whatever our goals are um, for longer.
thank you. It looks like somebody, Kathleen,
Cool.
answered your question. So it looks like she's using both Function Health, which does some of the HTE Outlive labs, and then she's also using Zoe Health that focuses on gut health and personalizes foods based on that on a test. And somebody else is asking, would my primary care practitioner, or sorry, would my primary care physician ever be able to use your system to provide me better health? So I think people are wondering, if we want this, how do we
Yeah.
get access to something like that?
Yeah. Let me go with Kathleen first.
Mhm.
Healthcare is enormously wide. And we are currently focused on, like I said, the leading causes of death. That's not to say functional medicine, uh, gut health, those are important. And I think as we learn more about them, they'll play a bigger role in all of this too. We had to start somewhere, so we figured we'd start with the 4 horsemen, as Peter Attia calls them, the major killers. But our goal with our product is to have basically your data record, we keep it for you, we keep it safe, and we only share it with others when you give us explicit consent. And we hope to have a lot of other types of providers that will build inside of our network where they can use your genetics and all this other information with your permission to help them do what they do. But potentially there are other tests that they do that are relevant to them. Those would get added in, and now other providers can see that too. So it's just a way to share and collaborate amongst a variety of different kind of providers. And we see that vision. That's where electronic health records are letting us down now. They're no good at sharing information so that whoever's helping you has your latest information. Like just yesterday, I went to Boone to get my heart done. They didn't know what medications I was taking. How could they not know that? It's in my health record all over the place. But yeah, so they ended up having to call somebody to find out what my medicines were. That's just a shame. So that's my answer to Kathleen. I hope that's good. But like I said, we're a little company now, and as we grow, that is definitely part of our goal, is to help everybody with everything that makes sense. For Gene Gerke, how could his primary care physician? So it's primary care physicians we're really building this far. So we're early. We have one here in Columbia. He's my doctor. He has about 5 or 6 other people here in Columbia, and he works very closely with our platform to use our data to make his analysis. So he's the one that got me into Boone to get my heart scan yesterday. So that's the goal. I'll tell you though, before I had him, I had a doctor at MU. And after I'd gone through this, the first thing Dr. Stanford did to teach me about it is he did me as a patient. And I learned some things about myself, so it was good. When I was done, I took my report to my MU primary care doctor and I says, hey, I got all this information. Do you want it? And he said, I'll put it in your health record. And so what he did is it was a big report. He put it in there just like he said, but he never looked at it, and no one ever else has looked at it. So part of this is finding the right primary care who has this prevention in mind, as opposed to waiting till you're sick so that he can charge you to fix you. And Atia talks about this too. How do we help the health system make that evolution? I'm not 100% sure, but I think helping doctors do a better job and making it more transparent and all is a big piece of that.
Yeah.
So keep asking questions over there, everybody, please.
Yeah, it's wild how segmented it is. I've definitely experienced that. Like the responsibility to remember everything is on the patient, which perhaps is not the best, especially when that's not everyone's specialty, right? Like I've had knee surgery and I can tell you like 2 details about it. So where all of the details live, truly, I have no idea. So I think as that keeps compounding, there are definitely going to be gaps in it.
Yeah. You haven't asked this question, but
Mhm.
AI is the big rage right now in tech. Everybody's excited about AI. But for AI to work, it has to have good information to base itself on. And so the fact that we're getting this very detailed set of information about everybody allows us, and we're actually using AI already, where we can present a patient's information in a de-identified way to AI, and then we can ask AI questions about it, or the provider can come up with their own questions. And so it's kind of the best of both worlds. as new science develops and it's written up, the research papers are out there, the AI will digest that and always have the latest evidence-based information. Google has a specific AI for medicine that they're working on, and that's what we're going to use. The key is there's always a person who's a doctor who sees what the AI says and decides, is that a good idea or not? We don't just do it just because of computers. So we're not getting rid of doctors, we're enhancing doctors is the way we like to think of it.
Yeah, I love that. I
And
love that
and
sorry, go ahead.
back to Gene's question, it's the primary care guys who need the most enhancement, and that's the biggest opportunity right now.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you sharing the 15 hours really brings that home because that's probably why it's in one of your charts somewhere, and no one's going to follow up on that.
Right.
So the book, we've talked about the four horsemen, and then, the kind of later part of the book covers different longevity factors like nutrition, exercise, and sleep that we can kind of use if we don't have the perfect genes of people who just naturally live to 120 while drinking beer and smoking cigarettes. So if we're not those people, we have to try a little bit harder. Which of
Right.
those areas do you find the most impactful based on your experience?
I think we all come into it with different backgrounds. My father died of a coronary event, and my uncle, my youngest uncle, died of a coronary event in his sleep. And so that's why I got a heart scan yesterday. That's an area. And the thing I do is the other thing Peter Attia said is the number one predictor of it, how long you're going to live, is a thing called VO2 max. I track my VO2 max every day on my Garmin watch. I went out and I ran the reactor hill 3 times this morning, working on my cardio. And so I track that number. I'm really happy to say my LDL, low density cholesterol, is 34. 100, anything below 100 is good. 34 is better. So that's an area I feel I'm able to take charge of. The MKT trail is out here. I can bike, I can hike, I can swim. And so for me, that plus eating the right things are just the most obvious. And they're the easiest to understand. Once you get into, managing your blood sugars, that's harder. Fortunately, that isn't a problem for me. But I had a trainer once who said exercise is the magic pill. Just most people decide not to take it. So if that's me, we're all different. Some don't want to exercise. I get it. Maybe just eat less fried food. But my wife and I try to eat healthy. We eat salads more, fish. And it isn't hard to do those things. It's just a mindset that you want to be healthy. You don't want to be like my mother when she's 97.
I
It's
think that
it's deciding, and that's another thing I think that helps. A personal example again. I was worried about my heart when I went to Dr. Stanford, and he started asking, "When was the last time you had a colonoscopy?" And I said, "Well, I had one when I lived in California. That was a long time ago." And he says, "Well, you know what? According to your genetics, you have a risk of colon cancer." And he basically chided me. I'll tell you, he actually said, "Bill, don't be a dumbass." He said, "If you have something going on in your colon and you don't catch it right away, you're a dead man. If you do a colonoscopy and they fix it, you don't have to worry. He said, you're a smart person, Bill. And he repeated it. Don't be a dumbass. Go get a colonoscopy. So you know what I did? I went, I got a colonoscopy, even though I hated it. Now I'm looking forward to Cologuard and things better than Cologuard. And those are coming out now. It's called methylation risk. And there's a test gallery. The gallery test can test for like 50 cancers all at once in one blood test. And my partner is on the speaker bureau with the company Grail for the gallery test. He was recently out there. And for the first year, they were seeing what they thought were a lot of false positives, where the test said somebody has this, and they looked and they couldn't see it. So they said, oh, it must have been a false positive. A year later, a lot of those false positives are now showing up in X-rays and biopsies and other means. And what they're finding is Gallery was able to see it before any other way of detecting it.
That's incredible.
That's a game changer. If just once a year you get a blood test and you know you have cancer before any other way of finding it. So obviously we're into the Gallery test. I've had that done. 9 times out of 10, it comes back and says there's nothing there, which is what you want. But when it says something there, that tells you need to go look at something. And usually the looking is imaging of some sort or something that's not too terribly invasive. And it's better to know than to guess.
I'm glad we are talking about the gallery tests and other types of cancer screening, because it seems like that's a still very controversial area, due to the potential for maybe overdiagnosis due to some of these false positives. So I'm glad that you were able to talk on that a little bit. And it seems like Biography Health is definitely on the pro, screening and doing the testing side of things so that you can at least know. A question that people might ask is, why would I want to know, right? I think the same way as with finances, sometimes it feels a little bit nicer in the moment to just stick your head in the sand and call it a day. From an emotional perspective, could you talk a little bit about that, about, you know, the different reasons maybe for choosing to do that?
Yeah. I mean, you have to sign a consent before we do your genetic testing that says we may find something scary and we're obligated to tell you about it if it's in there. Even if you didn't ask us to test that, and this is true with any diagnostic, if they're doing a heart scan and they see something in your lung, they have to tell you, oh, I saw something in your lung. Same with us. But it's knowledge is power, is the way I think of it. Is if I know I have a risk, it allows me to take proactive measures to diminish the risk. Maybe I can't make it go away, but if I can delay the onset for 5 years, that's 5 years more I have, compared to keeping my hand in the sand until, like Steve Jobs, he found out he had cancer too late, or he didn't do enough about it too late. And that happens a lot with pancreatic cancer. Pancreatic cancer is one of the ones Gallery can pick up. So just for that alone. But again, some people don't want bad news. The key is to understand there's almost always something you can do about it, often to make it go away. Like, I'm not going to die of a heart attack. I've made it go away, I'm pretty sure. Something else might kill me. but that's why we look at everything.
Thank you.
And it's early days, but new things coming along like the methylation risk, the Gallery kind of tests. There's other things called proteomics that are coming on the field right now. And that involves measuring, again, it's a blood test, and it's measuring all the little proteins that are moving around in your blood. Because proteins are how your head signals your muscles and your muscles signal other parts of your body. It's like the messaging system. So if you can decode that and figure out when one signal goes up, what does that mean? And again, your DNA never changes over your life, but your methylation does, and your proteomics do. So those aren't just tendencies you have, those are early signs of onset of disease. And again, if you know a disease early enough, like cancer, it's usually totally treatable. If you wait till it's metastasized and it's all over your body, it is totally not treatable.
I agree that knowledge is power, and
Yeah.
that in itself is worth a lot.
Yeah. And again, to people who understand that with their finances, these are proactive people, I would assume, smart people. And I find it very logical that they're reading Outlive and trying to decide what of that should they do. And I applaud everybody for that. We're in the early days, but I think that's what a smart person who cares about their family, that's what they do.
For someone maybe just starting out on this journey of, getting to know their bodies and where they currently stand and trying to improve, what would be your maybe top three recommendations from the book, in terms of lifestyle changes and kind of where to start?
I'm resisting the urge to plug our product, so I won't do it. But there's certain tests he talks about, like APOB is the one thing you look at for your heart. Most doctors don't get an APOB. My doctor had to get mine from the Mayo Clinic because it isn't in the normal set. So there's a few things he calls out, like watching your A1C if you're pre-diabetic. So start with whatever you think your problem might be and get the metrics. That's Most primary cares will at least do that for you. You tell them, I want to know my A1C, they'll get you your A1C. Maybe they'll even get a continuous glucose monitor for you. So start there in some area and build on it. But it's very confusing. You go onto Google and you start asking questions, you're going to find a bunch of answers. And many of them come from somebody who has a product they're trying to sell you, and that's why they told you that answer. And it's just hard to figure that out. That's why you need your primary care guy who has no skin in the game to decide what is good for you based on you, not because he's going to make money off of it. Um, go for walks, do whatever exercise you can. The other thing I saw a show the other night on dementia, what one of the biggest preventers of dementia is having active social relationships with people. So you need to have those social relationships, people you care about, you think about, and you interact with is a very good way to prevent dementia. Uh, so everybody ought to do that. That's easy. Um, I don't know, that's all I could come up with right now.
Yeah,
Maria,
thank
sorry.
you. That's great. No, that's great.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I think he talks about the social aspect, but really in the term of stress management or from the angle of managing stress. But I think the, you know, the idea of, okay, we can, manage stress, but also get a lot of other positive benefits from
Yeah.
keeping those social connections active.
Yeah, way before Atia's book, 15 years ago at least, I read a book called Younger Next Year. And it was written by a doctor and the person he was working with, and they alternated chapters. But it had three things. One was don't eat crap. One was do at least, I forget what it was, certain amount of exercise. And the third was care about somebody or something. And it was just those three things. Again, not hard to do. And those are the three things I've adopted. And I guess that's a great place to start. And that's a book from 15 years ago. So not a lot has changed except the details of what to do and how to do it.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I think I think it's definitely beneficial to have the information. If we kind of take a step back, it really is pretty simple to at least know that you're going in the right direction with eating the right things and getting enough sleep, doing some exercise, kind of the things that we know are good for us.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so we've got just a couple more minutes, I think. Does anybody else have any other questions before we finish up? Then actually, I will give you a couple minutes. Would you please plug your your company? So if I think Jean alluded to it, but if somebody is interested in having these types of tests done, how could they work with Biography Health if that's a possibility?
Yeah. So I talked about this with Gene the other day. We are now at the point where we are live and helping patients. Many are Los Angeles based because they're referrals to my doctor partner. We have a doctor here in town that I work with along with about 5 people, and we refer patients to him. So if we had a new person from Colombia, we would either refer to him or help you find somebody who was interested in this style of information and wanted to work with you. We do all the hard stuff, like get all the metrics and ask AI what to do and all that. So we are accepting patients. We have a friends and family deal right now for $5,000. Sounds like a lot. It is. But that includes a couple hours with my partner in LA on the phone, going over your case. First, he gets to know you for about an hour, and then he goes heads down, looks at all your information, and then he spends about 90 minutes with you at the end, giving you the information, telling you not to be a dumbass, that kind of stuff. And the real goal is to have your primary care there for that second conversation so that they order the test, they follow up with you because they know you better. So we're running that's a way to do it. There's other companies out there. There's Wild Health. 23andMe says they're going to do something like this, but I don't believe them. There's some that are based more on imaging, whole body imaging, which my partner doesn't think is very diagnostic at all, compared to like a Gallery test. So there's a few out there, but we feel that this is an early embryonic market, kind of like the internet was when I got involved with it. I have the same hope that it'll become what everybody kind of expects from medicine, and that I can be a part of that too. That's just my dream. Um, but there's a lot you could do on your own with Outlive or similar books. Um, largely just based on mindset, deciding I'm not, I want that extra carton of ice cream, but I know it's not good for me, so I'm not going to eat it. You know, that kind of stuff.
I think right along those lines, Kathleen asks, many of the interventions that you mentioned are very simple and straightforward. With rising healthcare costs, how do you see universal personalized medicine fitting into this? Given that
Yeah,
the interventions wouldn't require really any testing, things like eating,
yeah,
healthier, moving
yeah.
the body more, that kind of a thing.
Um, excellent question, Kathleen. Um, part of what we're up against is the current health system wants to get paid to fix a diagnosed problem. And so getting a doctor to even talk to you about your diet or exercise is pretty impossible. They don't get paid to do that. And they don't even try to prevent heart attacks, really. The insurance company doesn't care if you have a heart attack next year. All they want to do is keep you from having it this year when you're covered by them. So part of it is that, but even getting your doctor to talk to you about diet or exercise is hard. So a lot of other organizations are springing up that do that. But again, they aren't doctors. They can't order some of these tests and put some of the dots together. And they certainly can't help you on the four horsemen of the diseases. So, but again, we want to work with other people that are in those areas. Mental health is another one that's close to my heart. Um, for instance, your genetics control how you interact with drugs. And we could tell you based on your genetics which of 10 antidepressants is going to work best for you compared to all the others. And wouldn't you wish your psychiatrist had that information so they picked the best one first instead of just experimenting around? Um, there's a lot of supplements. I haven't mentioned those, along with diet. A lot of us have certain deficiencies with certain elements or other key things. We can pick those up on a lot of the tests. And so the interventions don't have to be hard or expensive. They just have to be identified, described, and empowered, I think, is the whole step of that. If you're already empowered and you know an area, I encourage you to go ahead and do it on your own.
Thank you, Bill. And Kathleen
Sure.
says, yeah, great application with the mental
Yeah.
health
Yeah.
pharmacy.
I have personal family members who, you know, sure would have been nice to know something before it, sooner instead of later. So that's one of the things we do. Again, we put all of your data in a record. We actually, though, are a member of the Quality Care Network, which is a US-wide network. All the big medical institutions are part of it to share information about a patient to help your future providers. And so we do this, it's called pharmacogenetics to see your drug interactions. That's the one thing we are going to share with that network so that future providers, when they go to prescribe a medication for you, if they want, they could look at that information and make a more informed decision. And we think that's, again, to help everybody have better outcomes. Um, we won't share genetic information beyond that or anything else beyond that. But having the ability for an emergency room doc to know what you're allergic to, what you're not allergic to, what might work, that could be a game changer. And we think everybody should have that tattooed on their wrist or somewhat thing. So our idea is we're going to share it into this quality care network to make it available.
Yeah, that's a great idea because it definitely is really a trial and error kind of a process with dozens of medications potentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
I
you so much. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, thank you for inviting me. I enjoy talking about that. As you can tell, I'm passionate about this. I don't know all the answers. Science is still figuring a lot of this out, but I enjoy learning about it and then trying to figure out how we can help people apply it. That's the part I enjoy, and I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to share that with people, and because the goal is for everybody to have access to this information and make use of it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, Bill. Really appreciated it.
Sure.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Stay healthy, everybody.